Hello and welcome back. Today we're on my 1987 Yamaha FG440-12. We picked it up yesterday and cleaned it all down, stripped everything off it just to see what we have. And we were short some hardware in some of the head tuners. So we lucked out and were able to find the parts yesterday, and last night I went out and picked them up. So today we're going to install the hardware, make sure all the tuners are working perfectly, smoothly. They're a good quality one because they're Yamaha, so we're just going to make sure that they're in top shop there, and then tape it off and do some fret work. There are divots in them, but we're going to just try, and they don't seem to be too deep. So we're going to try and smooth it out a little bit, level them up, and take some of the edges off. There's sharp enough, we can make them better. So that's where we're at today, off to the bench. So here's the hardware. We got the two ferrules, and although it is an original Yamaha part, they aren't quite the exact same. There is actually a difference in the length of the collar. The original one being on the top with the wider gap, but the threads are the same, so that's cool. The other thing is the washers. The one down on the bottom in the middle is the original one, and the three outside ones are just slightly larger. So let's get to replacing these, or actually just installing them. We're going to put the regular one back in first with the original washer, and then we got to remove these two ferrules to put two of the new washers in. All washers have been stamped from one side. There's a rounded edge and then a sharper edge. Sharp edge down on the original. Okay, now we take to make sure we get the sharp edge down, and the last one, which is the opposite, or the replacement one. Okay, let's get ourselves a little bit of structure and just double check these ones. I had this one off a little bit earlier. These nuts are very thin, so you want to be kind of careful with them because they will easily strip. Make sure these are good and snug. Come on. Yeah, after this message, I'll be right back. So now we're testing and adjusting these here tuners. Now, you just want them to be able to move a little bit. So what we want to do, this one's a little bit tight, so I'm going to loosen off this screw, make sure it's good and loose, and then just twist it till I get enough pressure on it that it doesn't rattle this way, but it still turns fairly easily. The only tuner on the whole guitar that might be a little suspect is that one, but we won't know for sure until we get it up to tune under pressure. I'm not twisting this very hard at all. It barely has to be tight. As soon as it makes contact and squeezes the little gasket that's in between the paddle and the tuner, and that's what makes it tight or loose, It doesn't take much more pressure to go too much. Okay, so that's that part. Now, the part I hated. So the first thing you want to do when you're taping off the neck is get a long piece of painter's tape, and you want it to just sit flush with the bottom of the frets. And stick it all the way along. And then you just go across and tape off anything that is not fret. And you do it all the way up to the other end. So all we really want to do here is just sort of deaden it. We're not going to sand it right down or file it right down so that they completely disappear, but we're going to get our edging file and just sort of first off try and remembering that the fret is curved this way, so when you swipe, keep that in mind. That should be okay. Now there's just little divots right near this end. So what I'm hoping to do is first off just sort of, I want them to go until they almost disappear. That one's pretty low. These might have already been done, because there's not much room. So I think all we're going to do is just kind of deaden it a bit with this here curvature. Then we're going to take out our flat, our edger, use our finger as a guide, and just sort of even more polished than anything. That one came out not bad. There's still, you can still see the divots, but they're greatly reduced. See, I'm just using my finger as a guide so that, yeah, that already took about half of that away. So very carefully, just do a couple of swipes and look. Oh yeah, those are just about gone. That one's just about gone. We're going to work on the divots first, and then we're going to take our straight edge and do the leveling across the bunch of them, because I noticed, I'm pretty sure there's a little gapping down in this end. So as I say, just use your grooved file and remember to keep a steady pressure across the full thing. And this is why you tape them off, so that you can retape them once you've cleared them off of the fretboard. And now the reason we taped off so meticulously is because now we're going to do the edges here. Now these have a little bit of a sharp edge, not too bad considering the age, but we're going to take our flat file, edging file, and just use your finger as a guide. And what we're wanting to do is just where the fret is curved this way, it comes up to the end, they cut it on an angle, and there's a little sharp edge. So we're just trying to round that out a little bit. And if you'll notice, as I start, I roll over, try and get right down into the side, and keep the perfect angle, and then just feel it, make sure it's smooth. We're going to go all the way around both sides, up at least as far as where the frets start going over top of the body. Once you get to the point where your fingers don't go up in there anyways, just check for sharp edges, like something you're going to cut yourself on, and do them. So next, we've got these all smoothed out pretty good, but they aren't level yet. So we're going to take this out and start rocking to see where we got a high spot and it needs to come down. But just before I started that, I took a look down the neck and it has a little bit of a back bow to it. So obviously you would be filing down if that's the way this was going. So we got out our 6-sided L-shaped adjustment tool, not a paid promotion, and we are going to loosen off the truss rod, probably at least a quarter turn, maybe a bit more. I want this to sit at least flat or a little bit of a bow in it, and it's not. So wish me luck. Left-handed, so I gotta always think twice. I want to turn that way. Go find out your own size, because most guitars are different and you really do not want to mess this up. So loosening. Oh, it is tight. Oh, very, very tight. Oh, you don't want to break those. Believe me, you don't want to break those, because in order to fix that, if you break your truss rod is a little beam that goes right down through the middle of the neck, here to here. So there's either an adjustment sometimes up in the headstock, but mostly down inside the hole here. You loosen it and it wants to let that beam that goes up through, which is in slightly this shape, wants it to go down, bringing up the headstock. That is relief. This one was way too tight and it almost had some back bow to it. So let's take a look down the neck now and see what it looks like. So there was a lot of back bow still in it, and I just touched this up again and it turns much easier now. It almost came loose there. We want a little bit of pressure on it. Let's take a look down the neck again, and we're getting up into the flattish range. I think we're going to leave it there for now. I would like a little bit more. Let's just see how much we can do this. Come on. Why wouldn't you put it where you can find it? Dang it. Okay. If it's a double action, this should start tightening up and going the other way. So wow, I had to pretty much take 2 complete rotations of the truss rod to make this fairly flat. There might be a little bit of bow in it, but this thing was under some kind of pressure and had a big back bow. So hopefully this is going to help out. Now we'll go over all the frets. There's a little bit of rocking right there that you can hear right on the first one, which means that the middle is a little bit high here. We're going to take our file and just give that a little bit of a tweak. We don't want to do too much, but we're going to take about 3 swipes and check it again. Pretty much done it. One more swipe ought to do it. And we're going to polish them up at the other end, but yeah, okay. No rocking. No rocking. No rocking. Next 3. Nothing on the outside, but a little bit in the middle. So we just want to do the middle and about 2 or 3 swipes and check it again. Now remembering, we want a little bit of curvature to it. So one more swipe there should just about do it. Yeah, I know that was 2. Okay, now we're going to just make our way up. Anywhere we get a knock, we take a couple of swipes, only a couple of swipes, and then check it again because you don't want to overdo it. So now we've gone all the way up and down the fretboard and they are level. 3 sides, well, 2 sides in the middle, all the way up. So good. Now final polishing, which means go get your leather gloves. And now it's time for every guitar's worst nightmare. The 4/0 steel wool, or type 0000 steel wool. It's the softest steel wool you can get, and it's the best thing for polishing frets. If you have an electric guitar, take all the electronics and either completely seal them in tape or everything, or what I used to do with mine was take the neck off the guitar. You do not, repeat, do not want any of these shards. Repeat, these shards in your electric guitar, and it will mess with the finish on your acoustic as well. If you get it on there and then try and wipe it off with, you know, a rag, you're going to be dragging steel shards across there. So I've made a little guard here, and away we go. Starting way up here because I don't, see? Because I want to test it on one that I'm not going to be using. And make sure that it shines up real nice. Now there's still a little tarnish on that, but once again, rubbing this is not conducive to microphones, so do this. Go across each and every fret until it shines. So polishing done, and here is why you tape up your guitar. Magnet. Look at that. That is all metal shards. And that's just a quick dipping. There's a lot more where that came from. So that is why you do it. You don't want any of that near any of the electronics in your guitar, and you don't want it near the finish either. So it's worth the time to mask everything off first. So I've cleaned up as much as I can. Now this is why we put those 2 stripes up either side of the neck before we did any of the crossovers. And that is so that we can take a whole bunch of stuff off all at once. And metal shards flew everywhere. We're going to do it all again at the end anyways, but we take the tape that we put along there, peel it back, and then we should be able to take all of the tape off in very few stripes. And ta-da! It mostly all comes off in one swoop. Voila. It was a lot easier than it was going to be beforehand though. So now we've cleaned it up completely, and the last thing we're going to do before we restring it and bring it up to tune and do the setup is oil the fretboard. Not a paid promotion. And we're going to just, because we don't know if this one's ever been done. Many people neglect oiling their fretboard. You don't want to do it way too often, but at the same time, one time isn't going to hurt it. So we're We've made sure we got all the metal shards out that we could. Anything that did land on the fretboard. So now we're going to put a nice liberal amount on, let it sit for a couple of seconds, see if it disappears, like soaks right in. You can sometimes tell how badly it needed it that way. But we're going to get full 100% coverage and then let it sit for a couple of minutes, see how it looks. And after letting it sit on there for a couple of minutes, we're just going to go around and clean up all the extra. You don't want to let it get way too deep, like completely saturate it, because you don't want the oil to get underneath the frets or between the fretboard and the neck. Because that might lift the frets or the fretboard, and you don't want that. So we're just going to wipe off all the excess, and then we can get ready to restring this thing and start with the setup. As I say, when you saw what it looked like before we started, there was not much use in doing the setup before we did all this. So now we've fixed up all the tuners, completely cleaned it, did a slight leveling of the frets and a polishing. What else did we do? Cleaned it. Oh, I haven't cleaned it inside. Oh no, that's next. Pooh. So now we've cleaned out the insides and we're ready to restring and start setup. But what I found inside was the block at the bottom of the neck here seems like it might be a little bit dry. So we'll be making sure this stays fairly well hydrated. These Yamahas are built like a Buick. They'll take quite a beating. And anyways, we will keep it humidified a little more. But what was more concerning, and I don't even know that, because down at the bottom, well, on the bottom block, what would be at the top if you were playing the guitar, there seemed to be a gluing issue. But I've checked out the outsides, and there's no, maybe not now, but there's no visual signs of it ever being taken apart down there. So whatever that is, whether it was just glue that got squished out in manufacturing or what, unless somebody had to go in and do something there at the bottom, I don't understand. But there's no marks on it where like it fell and had to be repaired, you know, at least not on the outside anywhere. So if there was some sort of an issue, it must have been inside, and they would have had to do it from there. But either way we go about it, it's time. Let's get some strings on this thing and start with the setup. So stringing a guitar is stringing a guitar. I'm not going to make you watch me do that. But we had this here particular guitar came with 7 of the 12 pegs. Luckily enough, I had just replaced the vintage pegs on one of my other guitars because they were starting to show cracks in them. But I've got extras here, and so we've got 13 pegs. Most of them are good. 2 of them have one little tiny crack in it. One of them has 2 tiny cracks, and one of them has 3 tiny cracks. So guess which one I'm going to put aside. Now, when doing a 12-string guitar, the pairs of strings, not always, but 99% of the time, it goes skinny string, fat string, skinny string, fat string. So the skinny string is on the top of the pairs. And so it is with this one. But I almost strung this up left-handed. Okay, well, now farthest away, roller on the end of the string goes rolling down into the hole. Da-da-da-da. Pin keeps going, string stops still. Wedge, crank, go up past 2 of the heads, because you're on a 6 string and you've got 6 pegs on each side, or about 2 inches extra, and then cut it, wind it up, and blah blah blah. Repeat 11 times. Well, she's up to tune. This is backwards, upside down, so it's not going to sound any good, but she sings like a dream. Brand new strings on it though, so all right, at the 12th. Wow. 3, so it has a whole lot of height, way too much height, so it's gonna have to come down. But of course I loosened off that truss rod pretty drastically, and it does have a pretty drastic height to it. I can bring it down a little bit, but I think we're gonna have to sand the saddle to bring it down. The saddle is just way too high, and on top of that, I have the saddle in backwards, so that's why it's so high. It's going to be like really low at the other end, because, well, I put it in as a left-hander. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, it's in tune. Now, starting at the 12th, we still have between 2 and 2.5, 2.5, almost 2 3/4. We're still pretty high. Okay, so we're going to want to lower this down some. I'm looking down the neck, and there's a bit of a bow to it, but not that bad. I think what we're really wanting to do is sand down the saddle, because it is really high, and that's like 3 down at the bottom here. It's fairly large. So next part of the setup, sand the saddle. But first we're going to make a measurement, see how far down we want to come, so that we know how much to take off. Because as we know, because of math, whatever you want to drop at the 12th, you have to shave off twice as much there. You want to drop 1 millimeter here, you take 2 millimeters off there, because of science, math. Halfway between here and there is there, so you drop 2 here, 1 there. Simple as that. And it's going to be like dark before I get this done. Typically. So now, out of the saddle, we want to take a little more off of the thicker end than the small end. I'm thinking about 1 millimeter at this end, and at least 2, maybe a bit more at that end. So basically what I'm going to do is get my straight edge and draw a line angle-wise on there. And that is going to be just basically our guide of where to start slowing down when we're sanding. I'm going to take my black marking utensil, not a paper motion, and just make a line. Yeah, I made a line. on the stinking straight edge. Yeah, okay. Let's try another line on the actual saddle. So what we have is a line that is a little thicker at one end at the other. So we're just going to try and sand down till we get to touch it at first, because that's going to be at least a 1/2 millimeter. If we take most of it off, we should be pretty much there. But I want to just take most of it and not all of it, so that we know when to stop. So basically, there we go. Now, let's put another line on the other side that is slightly different, because, well, it always is. And then we can use both of them as a gauge. Once we get close, we know the thinner one is getting close. We're going to have to go to the thicker one. And that one was the thinner one, so. Okay, so we disappear the smaller line first. And then if we still have to, we go to the bigger line. So now we just basically sand it off. Got some 180 grit sandpaper. Keep going, putting a little more pressure at this end because we're wanting to take more off of this end. And remember, save your nut dust. Okay, so we've sanded down till we've got about yay much. We're going to put that in, check it out, see how it is. Now, the other thing you want to do though is before you put it back in there, check for flat. We want the bottom of this to sit flat in the bottom of the groove. So after doing this by hand, of course, I've got it a little bit off, but I can still take a little more down yet. This will be the first time, so I'm going to try and flatten it as much as possible. Then we'll put it back in the guitar, bring it up to just rough tune, and see where the action is. So now we're back into rough tune. Take a look again at the 12th. And we have 1.75, 1.75, 2, a little bit more than 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, bit more than 2, bit more than 2. So we still could come down a little bit on the fatter strings, but I like really, really low action. But obviously with this being right-handed, why would I make it fit me? It's probably going to make somebody else very happy. So I guess that's where we go. Let's bring it into actual tune. Has fairly good sustain. Once again, up to actual tune. 175, 175, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and down here we're all 2, right, pretty much right across. So I think that's pretty much where we're going to leave that. And so there we have it. Rescue of a 1987 made in Taiwan Yamaha FG440-12. Right-handed, I know, but considering what it looked like when we picked it up to what it is now, it's a nice guitar. Is it worth flipping to be left-handed? The nut would be a fairly simple thing. The bridge would be another. I don't think I want to take a bridge off of a perfectly good guitar. We've got it set up now so that it's got from about 175 millimeters, 1.75 down here in the low string, well, the high strings, the skinny strings, up to about 2 millimeters in the full-bodied strings. So thanks for watching. Please share, like, subscribe, leave a comment below, tell me what I did right, did wrong, and I know I do things wrong. I'm not a luthier, just an old guy with too much time on my hands. And so with that, we'll catch you next time. Bye now.